at the phasing analysis here. Now, something interesting has happened with the phasing analysis, and that is that I have stipulated an analysis period to start over here. And I'll come back to that and explain shortly why I did that, and show you what happens if I didn't do that. But as you can see, the phasing analysis reflects the ranking. Okay, the most prominent trough is, of course, the 4.5-year cycle trough. And the next most prominent trough is marked as being a 40-week cycle trough, so it has less prominence in the ranking. Now let's take a look at the American markets over the same time period, over those same 2 years, from 2002. I don't have enough there. 2002 to 2004. Again, we have an analysis start period, which is happening right in the middle of this. Let's turn off the phasing first of all, so we're not misled by what Sentient Trader has done. Let's find those same 3 troughs. Okay, and here they are. The first one was August of 2002. Notice something interesting in the American market. It wasn't in August of 2002. It was, in fact, in July of 2002. Okay? So it occurred a few weeks earlier in the American markets. Okay? The next trough was October of 2002. And the final one was in April. You might remember it was in April of 2003 in the Indian and the South African markets, but it occurred in March of 2003, again a few weeks earlier, in the American markets. So some really interesting things are beginning to emerge. Let's rank these troughs. The most obvious, the highest ranking trough, if you like, the most prominent trough is October of 2002, right? Because it's the lowest one. I'm being a little simplistic, but that's the easiest way to rank these troughs. The second most prominent trough, so I would give this a number 1. Second most prominent trough is March of 2003, and third most prominent trough, or least prominent trough, lowest ranking is the one in July of 2002, which was, of course, August in the emerging markets. So I'm coming to some kind of a conclusion about all of this. What does all this mean? Well, first of all, I believe that markets around the world are all being moved by very similar cycles, but perhaps those cycles are all experiencing slight degrees of variation. The American market will experience a trough sometimes a few days or a few weeks before or after the emerging markets. I used to think when I lived in South Africa that the American market always preempted the South African market, as you saw happening here. The trough was in March in the American market, and it was in April in the South African market. But unfortunately, you cannot make such a clear and simple rule. You cannot say that the troughs are always earlier in the American market. I tried it. Believe me, I thought, I'm going to trade just on the basis of that. So when there's a trough in the American market, I'm going to wait for the trough to happen later in the South African market. But unfortunately, it doesn't always happen like that. Often troughs will happen on the same day, and I think there's some significance when troughs do happen on the same day. And a very, very prominent trough, the 4th of October, is a really interesting trough for me because it happened on the same day in markets across the world. There was no variation. Often the South African market will experience a variation of a few days. Sometimes, as you can see here in 2003, of a few weeks. There is no hard and fast and direct rule, sadly. I think there is something very interesting to be said for troughs that happen on the same day. If they happen on the same day, I do think it's very important, and I suspect that might be a clue to what's happening right now in the American markets, because there was a trough that happened on that day in so many markets. It's extraordinary. Euro to US dollar, South African market, Sensex, and so on. They all experienced troughs on the same day. So how can we use emerging markets to help us with our analysis? Well, I've specifically chosen the period in 2003 so that I can highlight that point. Many of you will know that, in fact, let me demonstrate it. Many of you will know that there is a big debate amongst Hurst circles as to the three troughs, end of 2002 and early 2003. And which of those three troughs is, in fact, really the trough of the 4.5-year cycle. Now, I have set the analysis period for Sentient Trader to be in late 2002, which forces Sentient Trader to choose the trough in March. If I didn't do that, and if I changed the analysis period to over here, and sorry, I've just got this taskbar is hiding things so that I can't see this bar number. I can read the bar number there, 1753. Let me change this. Okay, so I've changed the analysis period for that for this analysis, and as you can see, Sentient Trader doesn't really like the expert model that I'm using, and I am using an expert model on this analysis. But I want to show you what happens with Sentient Trader if you don't set the analysis period to start in late 2002, and that has to do with the resolution of these three troughs that we're speaking about in 2002 and 2003. Now, when I very first started, when I first introduced Sentient Trader to the public, if you like, way back in 2009. Sentient Trader has done the analysis without that, because I've got an expert model attached to it. So let me rather use this chart and do the same thing here, because I think that this will explain it a little better. Right, let me change that to a median chart, because I know flipping between these charts can be really confusing. Okay, so Sentient Trader is going to quickly recalculate that. I've got to see what happens. When I first released Sentient Trader to the public, there was a lot of discussion about how and why Sentient Trader was phasing the trough in 2003, and which of these three troughs should be chosen. And there was a famous Hurst commentator who sadly is no longer around, Airedale, whose name was Bob Chonsky, and he published many very, very insightful analyses. And he was the one that pointed out that, in fact, in March of 2003, he believed that should have been the most prominent trough. I can't get Sentient Trader to perform a bad analysis. Sometimes it's really hard to get Sentient Trader to make mistakes. I know not everybody would agree. Right, let me just quickly create a new chart. I was going to create a chart. I think let me use a chart, a Ninja Trader chart, ES. Right. I won't worry too much about that. Okay. And set the analysis period 1750. Right. Okay, let's get Sentient Trader analyzing that. So, what I'm hoping to point out to you is that there is much debate about which trough in 2002 or 2003, either the August, the October, or the March of 2003 trough. Which of those three troughs is the really important and really prominent one? And I'm trying to force Sentient Trader to perform a bad analysis, in my opinion. There we go. It's done it, and it's positioned a 4.5-year trough in October of 2002. Okay, why has it done that? Very simply because when we ranked those troughs earlier, as I pointed out, the October 2002 trough is more prominent. However, Hurst analysts believe that in fact the March of 2003 trough should be phased as the trough of the 4.5-year cycle. Okay, and the reasons for believing that have to do with how the shorter cycles break down and how the analysis works at a much finer detail. But if you had your eye on the emerging markets, and particularly in this case the South African market, then I believe you would have found it much easier to phase that trough in March of 2003 as the 4.5-year cycle trough, because that's what the emerging markets were doing. Okay, so I believe emerging markets help to clarify times when the analysis is a little bit uncertain or a little bit hazy. So I hope I pointed that out by comparison of these three troughs. Here they are again: August, October, and April in the South African market. And we go back to the US market, and here they are again. Let me go to the one that I have zoomed in. It's the July one. No, it's not. And here are the same three troughs here. The August trough in the South African market, in fact, occurred a few weeks earlier in July 2002, the American markets. The October trough, which was completely insignificant in the South African market, was very prominent in the American market. But it was almost insignificant in the South African market, as we saw a moment ago, and the April trough in the South African market was very prominent and clearly of a great importance. In that case, 4.5-year importance, and that trough occurred a few weeks earlier in the American market, and that is, I believe, corroborating evidence that this trough in March, which, as you can see, is of very almost equal prominence to the trough in October, should in fact be favored with the stronger cycle, the 4.5-year cycle in 2003. Okay, so I believe keeping an eye on emerging markets is really, really important, because emerging markets work with the same cycles, but often they can help to sort out which cycles are really prominent and which should be considered less prominent in other markets when there is some degree of confusion. So let's move forward and have a look and see what's happening with those markets, the emerging markets, right now, and the analysis, and let's see how that can resolve what's happening right now in the markets. Here is the Indian market. Let me zoom out again. Here is the Indian market. I won't speak too much about the analysis, but as you can see, the Indian market was expecting a trough, a very important, prominent trough of 4.5-year magnitude to be occurring round about now, exactly as we've been talking about for ages with the American market. And you'll notice that the analysis that Sentient Trader has performed has positioned that 4.5